Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Krista Moore Show. And it is a cold day in most of the country, but we're kind of feeling pretty good here in Raleigh, North Carolina today. I want to welcome everyone. Now, this show is brought to you by K Coaching and ID Growth as a new way to learn from industry experts or thought leaders. And I have a wonderful expert on the line today, and I'm anxious for you to meet her. And it's Lauren Bailey. Can you say hello?
Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, Krista. Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you realize this, but I've wanted you to be on a guest on the show since last June.
I feel so important right now.
I'm pretty happy. That's right. Well, and one of the reasons is because I do consider you an expert in inside sales, and you have an inside sales training organization. You started #Girls Club, which I believe is where we met. And I'm just thrilled that, to have you on the line. So
we were equally thrilled that you joined us at Girls Club, by the way. Thank you for being part of that movement.
Oh, you're welcome. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself, fill in the blanks from what I just did.
Yeah, well, you know what? When in my 20s, I used to think it'd be really cool if somebody called me an expert. And now that I'm in my 40s, what that means is I've been doing something for 20 years. And for me, that's inside sales. My first big girl job was managing a team of outbound phone sales reps in the IT sector. And I've just kind of gone onward and upward from there. I've led sales teams of up to about 30 million in the tech sector. And I've started training departments. After about 10 years in sales, I realized my passion was really more developing people. So I've developed training departments, built a few onboarding programs. Most notably for IBM and SAP. I got to travel the world on their dime, launching new inside sales centers. And it was amazing. And then 10 years ago, I jumped out of corporate America and I started Factor8.
That's awesome. And so that's why I wanted my audience and your audience to hear from you today on the show. And there's so much we could talk about, right? And gosh, we could be on this for days. But I wanted to just kind of narrow it down. If you could leave the audience today with 5 maybe hidden secrets or the things that you've learned over the years that you think, hey, here's the top 5 things that if you're thinking about an inside sales organization and you want to make sure that it's run successfully, here's the 5 tricks.
I'm really glad. Perfect. This is it'll keep us on track because we could talk forever. I'm going to talk about 5 hidden phone sales skills. So I'm going to start with a really short caveat. And the caveat is so much of what we see out there in sales, especially, well, let's call every book on the shelf, is about what to do and how to improve that conversation. But if you've been in phone sales for more than a minute or two, you know that most of your time and struggle, effort, and dollar is spent getting to that conversation. And so because that's the new way, that's the new normal, I'm going to focus there. The 5 skills we're going to talk about that most people don't talk about are really phone sales hacks. The first one will be voicemails. Then we're going to talk about introductions. And folks, these 2 alone can double your talk time instantly. And it's all about talk time, right? You can't sell anything if you can't talk to people. Then we're going to talk about engaging the customer. We're going to talk about the brush off. And we're going to end with one of my favorite topics I call closing for commitment, which means you don't have to close for the sale, but you can close that call, and every call can be closed.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I want to also let you know that we have a lot of businesses on the line that have outside sales organizations, and they have a small startup inside sales organization, and they are looking for these hacks. I mean, why, they've got to put processes and systems together, and they need to train their people effectively if they want to have a successful inside sales organization kind of out of the gate. The first thing you said was voicemail, and I know you and I agree that that's the start of the sales process, right? You've got to leave a voicemail. But I think there's a lot of people that believe that you shouldn't leave a voicemail. So go ahead and hit us with number 1.
Oh, you're exactly right. In fact, over 80% of folks do not leave a voicemail. And I just want to comment that this is a hack you can use even if you're the field seller. Because, you can't just drive by anymore and knock on the doors. You got to set appointments to talk to people. We all protect our time. So It now takes, we used to hear about 7 touches to get a sale, right? And that was a marketing statistic. Well, the Rain Group recently published that it takes 8 touches to get a sale. So we're getting a little bit more calloused, if you will. Well, when we don't leave a voicemail, we're wasting one of those touches. We're wasting an opportunity to brand ourselves. Now, I get it. You probably won't get a call back. In fact, the most recent stat I think came out of Zoom, and it was that 4.8% of voicemails are returned. And in my experience, it's actually usually a little less. But there are hacks. There are things that you can do to get a call back. So I'll tell you some of those secret tips. And the first one is keep leaving voicemails. CallRail published that if you leave one voicemail, right, you might be at 4%, but every voicemail additionally that you leave, you increase the chances of a callback by 10%. And I got to be honest with you, if you're a leader and you're paying for leads and you're paying for reps' time and they're not leaving a voicemail, you may be calling a lead 5 or 6 times. The average is 2, even though it takes 8 to 10. Mm-hmm. And if you're not leaving a voicemail, it's as if you never even existed to that customer, right? We're not getting the ROI out of our time when we're not leaving those voicemails.
For those that are afraid to leave the voicemail or think that they don't give good voicemails.
Well, most of us don't.
What are some tips or techniques that you would add to this hack?
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to tell you is I got to be really honest. I've left some doozies, like some real stinkers. I literally hung up one time and said, did I just tell Steve Shar that I'm single in a voicemail? Did that just happen? I was mortified. And we've all had that experience, and maybe that's why we don't leave them. Luckily, with tools today, we can record a good one after 87 tries and just hit a button, and it'll leave for us. But here's a couple quick hacks. Number 1, keep it short, 10 seconds or less. It used to be so they won't quit listening to it, and now it's so that it'll fit on one screen of my voicemail transcription service, right? Which is going to be full of errors because it's done overseas. Make it easy and short. Hack number 2, this is most important, never sell in a voicemail. Never sell, unless you just want to guarantee they're never going to call you back. You can tell them who you are, and then you try to get them to call you back. You don't leave your pitch on a voicemail, and that's one of the biggest mistakes we make. Mm-hmm. So those 2 combined should keep you from selling because you can't do it in under 10 seconds.
Yeah.
The third thing is keep the goal in mind. A voicemail should either drop a brand or get them to call you back. And that's it.
That seems easy enough, right?
Yeah, I remember ways you can do it to get that call back, and we can dive there if you want.
I remember having some voicemail training when I was I was a telemarketing sales rep, so that goes back a long way.
That's what we used to call it telemarketing, right? I was too.
Right. And it was great because we didn't have to leave voice messages because the voice message service wasn't even invented yet, but in my day. So I was lucky enough to get them on the phone.
I love it.
But when voicemail started to pick up, then there was some training around this technique, which was to say, hi, this is Krista Moore. We haven't met yet. And then that stops the ear from wandering and thinking, Krista Moore, who is that? That sounds familiar, and not listening to what's being left in the voice message. And I've taught that. And I think it's kind of a cool way to position the voice message. What do you think of that? Is that old
I think it's really cool. I think it's that old school technique, if you will. And be clear, I called the technique old, not you. It's like voicemails themselves. It's like peg leg jeans, and it's like what's old snail mail. It's cool again because people don't do it. I think that one of the techniques I love most is a little mystery and a little urgency, right? Krista, Lauren, calling. Please give me a call back as soon as you can. I'm at 480 da 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 da. Here's my number again. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking, what is this? I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'm going to call that back. Right? Yeah. I wonder what this is about.
Also adding, I was referred to you. That and think, well, did my boss refer? Maybe I should call back because my boss might have referred it.
Yes. And in fact, if you've got a name, use it. We call that a lever. Krista, hi, it's Lauren Bailey. Lori Richardson asked me to give you a call. I promised her that I would. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. I'm at 480 da 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 da.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so it's
I have to tell you a story. I just thought of a story that I remember teaching a sales rep how to leave proper voicemail messages, and I made the biggest mistake that you could make. I'm leaving a message for a very important contracting officer. I forgot to hang up the phone, and I turned to the person I was training and started talking bad about the person I was leaving the message with, like, oh, he never picks up, and don't expect him to call back, and that was all left on the voice message. And I'm continuing my training, and then I heard this, whatever they say, like your message is sad.
If you're satisfied with your message, did you get to delete it?
I remember calling back and leaving another voicemail apologizing.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I never got that appointment.
Yeah, right. But one of the things I love about that story is it brings up another point. If you have to choose between robot voice and I totally effed this up, be human and totally F it up.
Yeah.
Right? Like people will root for an underdog. Right? If you're in the middle of the message and you're like, I can't believe I'm still talking. This is probably the worst message I've ever left. This is pretty embarrassing. Please take pity on me and call me back. Like, I would love for somebody out there to A/B test the I'm an idiot, please take pity on me technique and see if it works.
Yeah. Well, and we don't want to sound scripted, right? That's the main thing.
Yeah, and they do. They really do. So either we're not leaving them or we sound like robots instead of humans. And the cool thing about being in sales right now is that, like, this is our time. We've over-processed and over-automated and under-trained all of our people that just being a conversational human is a differentiator.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
The number 2 you spoke about was introductions, and I think that falls nicely in line with what we're talking about now, because you want to be authentic in that introduction, right?
Yeah, you do want to be authentic. And just like voicemails, the number 1 tip is don't pitch, okay? Most people think their value prop is their intro. The problem is the value prop is designed to make you sound fantastic and get people want to buy from you. So that is what not to do. Hi, it's Lauren calling with Factor 8. We're the nation's leading inside sales training company that's known for getting reps live on the phones. Like, you totally... Right, it's a live show, and we just lost half your listeners. I'm sorry for that. Nobody gives a damn. So stop doing that in the intro. The goal of the intro is to actually get them talking. And the technique is to remember that they're not listening to you anyway. So the intro instead is your name and company name if it's short. Doesn't matter. You could say, like, this is Big Bird, and I'm calling from Sesame Street. He hasn't heard you. And then you try to perk their ear with just one little value or lever, something that they won't remember, something they're barely listening to, but something that gets them to stop typing email while they're listening to your intro, right? I'm calling to see if I can help double your talk time. I'm calling to see if I can help you get greater ROI out of your leads. I'm calling to see if I can make your training a little easier this year. It doesn't matter what you say. All they heard was one of those tiny little benefit statements that perked their ear. We call it the SWIFT. So what's in it for them?
Okay.
The key's the last part. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
You ask a question, not an open question, a closed question. Something happens in the brain when I ask a question that you can't help but mentally answer it. Krista, what's the name of your company? It's there. You couldn't stop yourself, right?
That is a very cool trick.
So if you ask an open question, it's easy to not answer. Krista, what's the number 1 challenge you're facing today in your live talk show? You're like, it's easier to hang up on you, right? Like, I can't think about that right now. I'm barely listening to you. But if I ask you a closed question, you're going to answer me because you can barely help yourself because your brain went there, and we have this social contract, even with strangers. I ask you another one, you can't even look at your email anymore, and you're accidentally in a conversation with me. Now I drop the open question, and we're in that explore part of the sales conversation, which, by the way, is when they'll say, I'm sorry, who the hell are you again? Now it's time for your value prop.
Yeah. Boy, I like that. So I'm hoping that people have I wrote that down. And for those of you that aren't clear on what a closed question is, it's one that's going to elicit like a one-word answer or a yes and no answer.
You got it. It's rote. You want it to be rote, right? You can't help but answer it. The hard part about that right now is it needs to be something that's not on the first page of LinkedIn and yet still a rote answer, right? So you can't say like, you're in Raleigh, right? It's like, hey, come on. Like, that's just, you got to try harder, buddy.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
How many years have you been hosting your live talk show?
3
So that's
years.
something. Yeah, you've got the answer. It's 3 years. You love it. Your face lit up when you said it.
Mhm.
So that's the key you're looking for. Closed, open, and they're accidentally talking to you even when they didn't want to.
Great. Good stuff there. And number 3, you talked about engage, right? So that would be the next step is to get them engaged, get a two-way conversation going, listening to them and getting them talking.
Yeah. So that's when you start using your open questions, right? I know every training you've ever gone to has said open questions, and I do agree. But once you earn the conversation. So once you're in that step, the key is questions. Like there's a million ways to ask questions. There's a million different kinds of questions, right? You can do a spin question. You can do a value question. You can do an open question. You can do a challenger question. The right answer is probably a mix of those, right? During this phase, what we're trying to do is get them interested. We're trying to find opportunity, right? With something they either didn't know they could have that was better or something they know is already a problem. And holy cow, look at this, we can solve it. What goes wrong here is that we too often try to close for that next step. This is where process and scripting has hurt us a little bit. So we do a lot of training with SDRs, BDRs, those people who are just doing that very tip of the spear front end, let me get an appointment. So you say, hey, what's the goal of the first call? And they'll say to book the appointment. The problem is that means as soon as somebody says, oh, well, I've been hosting the show for 3 years. Great. Well, listen, my name's Lauren and I'm selling this. And I'd like to get 30 minutes of your time with my AE who's going to sell you on that. We're pitching too soon, the premature pitch. If we look at it differently, the goal of the call is to get the customer or prospect to engage. The goal is to get them to lean in. And if you do that well, the outcome is the meeting, right? So that means we have to have a human conversation. That means we have to be curious. That means it has to be 2 ways. The number one way to tell if they're engaged is if they're talking more than you.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it too. And I'm thinking so often though, even sales managers and sales leaders are pushing for the outcome to be the appointment because that's how they're being held accountable. Yeah. How many appointments did you get today? Not how many nice calls did you have?
Right.
So what would you say to those that are responsible for the inside sales organization's success?
Yeah. I would say get to know the magic of KPIs. When we work with inside sales leaders, you can always tell a young leader, okay? And I was one myself. This is how I recognize it so well. Young leaders talk about metrics. Hey guys, I need more dials, right? Which never works, you guys. If you ask for dials, you know what you get? Dials. You don't get conversations. You don't get sales effort. You get dials.
No one left a message because they were busy dialing.
Right, exactly. You don't want dials, you want conversations, right? So talk time over dials, but conversations over talk time, right? And so a young leader will talk about metrics and they'll talk about results. I want dials, I want appointments if you're an SDR, right? I want dials, I want orders.
Well, what about what's in the middle?
KPIs, key performance indicators. Now they're different for every role.
Do you think is that defined as the steps in the sales process?
Yes, they could be the steps in the sales process. They could be creative ones as well. So let's go back to that SDR role since it's hot right now and we were just talking about it. If the goal is the appointment, what are some baby steps along the way? I call those small wins. Well, one of them is a conversation, right? An SDR rep may dial 50 to 100 times a day. And on average, out there, they're going to get maybe 8 conversations. Maybe 10 conversations, better if you've got some acceleration tools. So one of the things we can do as managers is say, hey, how many did you get over 2 minutes? That's the fastest way I look at it. Talk time over 2 minutes. A voicemail is almost always a minute and a half, okay, or under. So if you have one rep who's making 100 dials and they have 5 calls that are over 2 minutes, and you have another rep who's making 80 dials, but they have 10 calls over 2 minutes, we know which one's more effective in getting and keeping people on the phone, which, by the way, is where voicemails and intros are going to come in, right? Engage will come in there and keeping them on the phone. You can look at the average talk time. Are you having long enough conversations? Another example may be scheduled callbacks, right? So somebody was interested enough to say, hey, I do want to know more, but let's be honest, I didn't mean to pick up this phone call. Thought it was my kid at daycare calling. So could we talk again? And then we schedule the callback. So looking at people's calendars and saying, how many pre-scheduled appointments do you have that are coming this week? That could be one. How about downloads? So, and in fact, we're getting into another topic we're going to talk about for closing for commitment. Some of these baby steps could be, hey, I'm interested enough that I want to learn more. So maybe I'm going to download something. Maybe I'm going to go do some research or ask a question.
But it's
maybe I'm
really
going to commit to a follow-up call. Like I said, it's different for every sales process and every sales motion. But if they're standing, if it's just the appointment, we're missing an opportunity to coach them in the right direction. And we're missing an opportunity to celebrate small wins and keep morale high.
Yeah, you're right. Now, I think number 4 had to do with how to handle, like a hack on how to handle some of the brush off. Because at this point, if you left a good voice message, you actually are starting a conversation, you're getting engaged, now is the chance for them to brush you off. Or blow.
Right. You're so right. Like it can happen almost any time. So let's get clear on terms first, okay? An objection happens after, I would say, about 5 minutes or longer. An objection is an informed opposition or challenge to what you're doing. And they're fantastic. They're like roadmaps on how to close the sale. I love everything you're talking about. Well, I'm not sure I like the price. Great, now I know what I have to solve, okay? A brush off is an uninformed challenge. A brush off usually happens in the first couple minutes. So I did a great intro, or I made, I got you to call me back. I've been on the phone with you for a couple minutes, and all of a sudden this guy's like, hey, yo, wait a minute. I don't know how you did this, but I don't want to be in this conversation right now. I don't have time for this. I'm not the right person for this. I don't have any interest in this. I've got this handled already. We've heard those, right?
Yeah.
So that's a brush off. It basically means I don't even know 2 beans about you. I can't remember your name or your company. I just know I don't want to be talking to you right now. And we need to handle it differently than an objection.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's a lot of training around how to handle objections, right? In terms of getting clarification and asking questions. So how would you recommend you handle the brush off?
Not like an objection. So if you say to me, hey, I don't have time for this right now, and I try to clarify with you and be like, well, why don't you have time for this right now? And now I'm like breaking rules of objections because I'm sounding defensive. Right? Well, I don't have time for this because I don't know who the heck you are. I'm an important lady. Right? So that instead, what we have to do, the key to the brush off is keeping defenses low, but getting them talking. Okay? You get them talking. And I like to recommend, again, closed, open. Hey, I don't have time for this right now. I get it. Is it a busy month in particular for you right now? Right. And I'm getting I'm going to ask a question about this.
So yesterday I got a sales call from, they said they were a technician at Google, and they did exactly what you're describing, and maybe you've trained them, but it's close, open. And I started getting a really creepy feeling, and I knew I was listening because I was more interested in their sales pitch, but they don't know that I'm listening because I'm curious about their sales pitch. I'm not at all interested in what they're trying to sell me, right?
I know the poor reps who call sales trainers, right? Sorry, everybody.
Or the sales reps that walk in our office and try and sell us something, that we torture them. And I did say, because it started getting kind of creepy, and I said, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. And he should have said, as you're describing, if he ever wanted to talk to me again, handling that not defensively, but he's like, fine, I'll call somebody. I'll call somebody else that wants to be number 1 in the Google search for executive coaches.
Come on, right?
I'm like, okay,
Come
Jen,
on.
I'm not talking to you anymore.
Yeah, if you're getting a creepy feeling, chances are they're reading from some sort of a script.
Oh,
Chances are they're high pressure kind of boiler roomish,
mhm.
and they're just trying to funnel you in with the rest of the herd.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment because we're talking about inside sales hacks, and nobody wants to be that guy
Yeah,
that is perceived as creepy
yeah.
or obnoxious or working from a script or under pressure to sell.
But
What
that
would you
defines
just?
inside sales, right? Like,
That's right. So how do you get away from that?
one of the first things I'm going to tell leaders is please resist the temptation to script. It is not your friend. I think we're in the situation of scripting and overprocessing today, frankly, because of our friends in SaaS. The SaaS startups backed by venture capital have this unrealistic, disruptive technology spike that, by the way, 1 out of 10 of them hit because they have to carry the other 9 that don't. It's so high, it's unrealistic. They're looking for, I can bring on 50 people who are going to get results in month 2. Well, there's no way to kind of organically train that. And because we have such a war for sales talent, you can't buy talent. You got to build it, you guys. Try to buy talent out there. The average lifespan of a rep is 18 months in
Yeah, I
inside
actually
sales.
thought it was going to be shorter than that. Yeah.
It's
It,
18 months. So you want to buy experience. That means at best, you're going to get 1 year of experience. They're going to burn out in you in 6 months. So what we do is we hire these young, fresh people. We haven't built messaging and training to teach them. So we give them a script. And then we think, ooh, here's 85 different ways it could go. Let's write all those down, which is why we get robots. Because damn it if the customer doesn't go off script every time. So what we've got to teach instead are the goals of the call. Right? That makes all the difference in the world when the rep understands, oh, all I'm trying to do is to get him to ask 2 questions about what we solve, because that means interest, right? And that means I can schedule a follow-up.
well,
I
but
love messaging starters too. Just don't script it. Say, hey, we want to talk about something like this. Put it in your own words. What
yeah.
works for you?
I really like what you're saying because I think most people believe that they should at least work from a script because they're just not sure what that voice message should sound like or how to handle some of those brush offs, that they have this script, so to speak, with the closed, open questions. But I'm going to go back to what you said, and you and I are on the same page here because we do sales training. If you train them on how to engage and have that conversation, you shouldn't need the actual script.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crutch and it's okay. But at the very least, play them examples of calls, give them message starters, and let them put it in their own words. Because one of the fastest ways to kill confidence is for me to say, Krista, I brought you in because you're going to be an amazing sales rep. Forget everything you know and use my words.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Am I going to sound great on the phone?
Yeah.
And don't we know that sales is a confidence sport?
That's right. Now, the number 5 you referred to, I believe, as closing, but it's more about closing the conversation necessarily, not necessarily the deal, so to speak.
Yeah, and in fact, I should title it that. That's well said. We call it closing for commitment. So every call can be closed. Anybody who's done inside sales outbound calling, even if it's an account, if it's not super hot best friend that you're calling, I'm sorry, not a hot best friend, but a warm, a really warm account who knows you very well and they're your best friend, then it feels kind of coldest, which is why we've been hired, okay? So we're making calls out to them, and let's say we get the brush off on the first one. Let's say the second one we have to reschedule. Let's say the third one I get a little closer, but it's like, not now, call me again. It sounds really familiar probably. The problem is they get so many calls, and we didn't have enough time with them for them to really remember who we are. So we're kind of starting back in our own end zone again. So let's go back to the SDR who's trying to get the appointment. If he's standing in his own end zone and the manager's saying, get me an appointment, what we're doing is tossing him the ball and Hail Mary. Long bomb, long bomb, long bomb, long bomb. Look at this. 1 out of 10, they say yes. Low hanging fruit. They happen to be waiting for my call, or they were too nice to say no. They may or may not show up, right? 50% of those won't show up. But what if instead we tried to get a first down? Remember how we talked about small wins?
That's right.
Closing for a commitment is like closing for a small win. Maybe it's just, well, that's kind of interesting. Well, I tell you what, why don't we schedule a follow-up call, and I'll bring the 2 pieces of information that you asked about, and you bring 3 more questions. How's Tuesday at 10 or at 2? That could be a small win. I just gained field position, right? And when I got that commitment from the customer, I can call it a first down, because when the customer says yes, or even better, if the customer takes an action item, it's marked on the field. Even if they don't show up to that next meeting, what you've got working for you in your favor right now is guilt. And let me tell you, it's worked for religion for thousands of years. It can work in sales too, right? You've got some brain space. Oh, I said I was going to go to the party. I said I was going to bring the beer. I feel a hell of a lot more guilty for canceling now than if I never replied to say I was going to come or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so there's a favor due. You never know.
Bingo. So if you can get them to say yes to whatever it is, like if the long bomb's the appointment, try to identify what are the small wins? What are the first downs? Like, let's run a running play instead of the long bomb pass. Or if you fail at the pass, let's at least back it up. And on the second down or the third down, let's try something that's a little closer in.
And I'll echo what you were saying before about celebrating those small wins, because it can be a grueling job, making those, telemarketing calls, so to speak, or inside sales dials. It's very, very difficult.
It's just one of the toughest jobs ever. And I do truly believe that one of the reasons the burnout is happening faster and faster and faster is because we're not developing people in gaining confidence in doing it. They don't feel successful at work. They feel like they have to put on a mask and read somebody else's words. And they're not doing it with confidence, they're doing it with bravery, right? If you have to put on a cape and a mask to do your job every morning, what you're feeling is, right, like that's brave. I don't like it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to push through. Whereas somebody who's really confident in it, like they get it. I know the goal. I'm excited to talk to people. My company is developing me. In fact, I could cite 28 studies that we don't have time for that talk about how with millennials especially, that's their number one ask. And the number one reason they're leaving companies is that nobody's training them and teaching them to do and love and feel confident in sales. And that breaks my heart, because we're kind of poisoning the well, right? All these reps who are coming into sales and being given scripts and burning out in 9 months, they're never coming back to sales.
No. Well, one thing that I love about your programs and what you're doing and how I met you is, and this is a great time to introduce it since our show's almost over, you founded #Girls Club for that exact reason, right? To keep women in sales, and this was more for women in sales. And then you have the sales bar, which I'd love for you to send some people information on that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about those, and then I'll put up a slide that has your contact information that we can direct people to.
Yeah, you got it. The truth is, as I look back at my career, every brand I've started, Factor 8, the Sales Bar and Girls Club, is about helping people feel more confident at work, right? Factor 8's doing it with large companies when they need to do face-to-face training with reps, new teams, growing, scaling teams. The Sales Bar is putting it online so it's available to the people who are scaling 1, 2, 3 person teams, right? 10, 20, 30 person teams. They don't have the huge budget. And Girls Club is about helping getting more women into the leadership ranks in sales. And it's all about building confidence, right? It's all about building confidence. So I'll turn off my camera as well so that we can see the slide. And I just want to thank you so much, everybody, for giving me a bit of an audience and having fun today.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what's on the slide, best way to get a hold of you. And I would love to have them check out the Sales Bar. I think.
Yeah, thank you. We have a free trial. So I think the class we have out there right now is the voicemails class. So if you're interested in getting a better voicemail, you can sign up for a free 1-week trial, and you'll see how we put all of these sales hacks available on the Sales Bar. So just go to www.thesalesbar.com and you can sign up for that free trial and take the class.
Yeah, and I want to just add that you have a lot of free materials and newsletters and podcasts and just so much to share, and you're willing to share it. So I want to make sure that anyone that's on this call knows how to best reach you. Maybe if they just send you a message and say, hey, put me on your mailing list, or what would you suggest there?
Oh, you bet. You bet. The fastest and easiest way is to go to factor8.com and sign up for that newsletter, because we do send lots of great tips and hacks, and of course notification of next time we're out talking in the world about that. I also would love for the listeners to link up with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and we put lots of good content out there as well. If you can't remember any of that, you can just email me directly, LB for Lauren Bailey, LB@factor8.com.
All right. Thanks, LB.
I love connecting with you.
I'm glad you were our guest.
With the audience.
Yeah, take care. So isn't LB great? Now you know why I've been wanting her to be a guest since last summer. She just has so much knowledge that she can share with all of you. So thanks for joining us on this. You know, our guests, we like to mix things up a little bit. Well, let me just tell you that on March 6th, we have someone quite interesting that's going to be our guest. Her name is Susan Hyatt. Some of you might know Susan Hyatt. You can Google her and check her out. But she has a new book coming out called Bare, B-A-R-E, and she's going to get bare with us. She actually has a wonderful process called the Bare Process to help women in particular love their bodies, stop being obsessed with dieting, and stop being obsessed with food. And so I'm anxious to interview her and find out more about this. So that is March 6th. So we'll see you then. And just know that here at K Coaching, we care about you and we care about your success. Take care.